refused to get on board in Bombay, and after a while, I think Winston Churchill made him. About an hour later, I looked. The rest of the convoy had gone, and we were left alone. Now that was February the 3rd. February the 4th, I was in my favourite spot on the ship, right in the bows. What a glorious day. Sun shining, beautiful place. I could even see the bed of the ocean below me. And I'm saying to myself, what a lucky fella I am. And 27 Japanese bombers came over. And it was a miracle the ship wasn't hit. There were clusters of bombs on both sides. Very little damage, but it's amazing that the gap in between the clusters of bombs was our ship. It knocked some lifeboats to pieces and buckled some of them up. But you see, the Japs knew where we were. And on February the 5th, they came over with their dive bombers, and for several hours, they attacked our ship. Every gun on our vessel was sending up at last, I got up on the deck and managed to see an absolutely fascinating sight. There was a ship nearby called the Felix Roussel, and on it were the Northumberland Fusiliers who had machine guns, and there were thousands of tracer bullets going into the sky, Japanese bombers coming from all sides, bombing, kept missing our ship at first, but at last 3 of their bombs went through our ship, through the deck, through the officers' mess, and into the engine room. In no time at all, there was flames, there was smoke, and we could hardly breathe for the smoke. But I was still fascinated by what was going on, because the Japs then turned their attention to our escort. It was the destroyer called the Exeter. It was one of the 3 little ships at the Battle of the River Plate that put paid to the Graf Spee. I'm talking about River Plate. The little lad doing his homework, and he said to his dad, "Dad, where's the River Plate?" His dad says, "Ask your mum, she puts everything away." Now, on that vessel was a friend of mine, and I was praying that they wouldn't be hit. And that vessel was going like a little greyhound in the sea, dodging quickly to the left, quickly to the, I should be saying starboard and port, and missing them. And at the same time, we were sending up a rare salvo of gun. There came a time when we had to gather right in the bow of the ship and crowd there. When we were there, we were in danger of being hit by our own people because our ammunition on board the ship took fire, and there were bullets flying all around us, just like bees round a pot. And one of my friends, he was hit, Commodore Wilson. They took a door off, 2 big ropes, they laid him on the door and lowered him down into the sea. What a lone sight as he walked. Thought I would never see him again. And then one of our officers was killed outright when the bomb landed, and 2 other officers were very, very badly injured. There came a time when the colonel said, "Things are too bad. I doubt we'll have to abandon ship." Now, he said, in the distance, there's a pall of black smoke. I wanted to swim there. It's about 8 or 9 miles. I've never been out of my depths in the bath. How did I get into this mess? Well, I'll have to go back to 1939 when I was a really busy lad. I was working in a factory from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5. Even on Saturdays, 8 o'clock to 1. There's only one day of the week I could have a lie-in, but I couldn't. I was in the church choir. I was also going to night school 4 nights a week, studying science, French, maths, and English. So I didn't have much time. And I was hearing all about this fellow called Hitler. You've heard of him. And I read up things and I knew it was going to be a war. So I wanted to join something. And at that time, there was the colonel came to the Sunderland and appealed for people to join what he was called a regiment of artillery. Within just weeks, there were 400 young men from Sunderland that joined up. Your dad was among them. No. But anyhow, there they were, 400, drilling without any equipment. And do you know what? Within 3 weeks, they gave me a strike. But at the same time, they gave me 12 intakes to look after. Intake were men who were called up. They didn't volunteer, they were called up. They didn't want to be in the army, they didn't want to be in anything really. And I looked after them for a while. And then one morning on parade, freezing, fall out Lance Bombardier Gibson. Hey, that was me. What have I done wrong? Anyhow, went up to Sergeant Major and he says, right, pack your kit, lad. You're going to Catterick. And don't disgrace the regiment. But Catterick in those days, it was like Siberia, covered with ice and snow. I got there the next morning, I found the room where we had to have the lecture. And I was just opened the door and looked inside, and there were all officers standing there. And I thought, I've come to the wrong place. I was about to go away when a group of sergeants came. I found that I was the only one that only had one stripe on his arm. You see, in leisure time, the officers went to the officers' mess, the sergeants went to the sergeants' mess, and I was in the right mess. Because I only had one stripe, they were reluctant to pair up with me. But I had the last laugh. A fortnight after getting home, I had a letter from Catterick, from the chief instructor, and in huge letters across the top it said, well done, youngster. You were the youngest in age, the lowest in rank, but the highest in marks. So I went back to the sergeant major and said, I didn't let the Sunderland team down. Right? Thing is, I wanted to go abroad. And at last came a time when we said, oh, we're going to go abroad. And then a tragedy. They changed our regiment from a field regiment to an anti-tank regiment. All that work I'd done at Catholic, gone. I wasn't pleased about that. But I was pleased when we got onto the liner called the Strathhead. And we left the Clyde on the Strathhead, and they put me in charge of the Bren guns. So the Bren gunners were in boxes, wooden boxes, scattered around the ship, just big enough for 2 men and the Bren gun. And I had to go around, especially in the middle of the night, with cocoa. We were in a storm, was freezing cold, it was pouring with rain, it was foggy. It took me an hour to find my way around the ship. I was getting me to all I could see were two helmets. I used to tap on the helmets and shout, "Popo!" And they would pop up like Jack in the boxes. One night, I was struggling to get round the ship, and suddenly I went flat on my face, and I wondered what had happened. And it wasn't until the next morning I heard that our liner, the Strathhead, had collided with a liner called the Stirling Castle, and both of us had to go back to the Clyde for repairs. So I didn't get abroad that time. They sent us to Liverpool to do fire watching. And I lost 3 of my friends one night in one of the air raids. Well, I was disappointed we didn't get abroad. I was disappointed we changed to an anti-tank regiment, and then I lost 3 of my friends. And I happened to see a huge poster, and it said, "Your country needs you." And underneath it said, "Wanted young men to be trained as pilots. We are short of pilots." So I thought, that's it. So I wrote to the Air Ministry. I didn't tell our colonel mind. Wrote to the Air Ministry, and I got passed to go down to Cardington in Bedfordshire, and it was there. I thought I was only going to be there for an interview and then get back to my regiment. But they kept me there for 3 days, and the regiment was starting to call me a deserter. No. 3 days of examination, and then they gave me a form saying, "Past fit to be trained as a pilot in a 2-seater night fighter." I'm glad I had some of them. Now, there was another fella in khaki uniform up there, and he was worried. He says, "They're not going to understand me, the interview board." He's a clever lad. The lads round about the Air Force lads were saying, "You'll be all right. Can you say actually?" If you can say actually, you'll be all right. But poor little lad couldn't say actually. So he didn't get through. So I can't help it. I like writing verse, and I wrote the verse about him. This is him. "When I was just a nipper, I never thought out about talking. I just opened my mouth and words would come out. It was easier than eating or walking. When I was 5, I had to go into the infant school. Miss Bishop was a tartar. Do you know, she never said that buttes were fruits, and water must be water. Why, we're Parsi feed were hall, but it really didn't matter. We'd say the proper words to her, then go and plodging our buttes through the water." In junior school, we met Miss Rain. Her diction was fantastic. She rounded her vowels and mouth diphthongs with lips that seemed elastic. But when we passed 11 plus, we stopped pronunciation. We had no time for fancy talk and secondary education. It was maths, algebra, and the Industrial Revolution. And we spoke a bit of French and quite forgot the English elocution. And then when we left school and started work, we found they all talked rough. And if we said words the proper way, they would say you were a puff. So I've spent 6 years in the forces, and I've seen the war right through. And I've always worn the khaki when I wanted to wear the blue. And the army guts are killing us. My socks are ringing with water. But I'm getting demobbed to it today, so actually it doesn't bloody matter. So my problem now is to get back to my regiment and not tell them what had happened. But when I got back there, they hadn't time to talk to me, They were all packed, ready to go abroad again. We went down to Avonmouth near Bristol, and we got on a ship called the Oronsay, sailed up to the Clyde, joined another convoy, and set off across the Atlantic. Now, they said we were going to North Africa to fight Rommel. Now, if you look at the map, the British side is up there, and North Africa's down there. So we should have been going that way. But we went that way. It took us right across near Iceland, and halfway across, we were met by the US Navy. They weren't in the war, but they sent their ships out and they guided us into Halifax, Nova Scotia. In Halifax, we left our Empress, our Oronsay, went across, climbed up another gangplank and found we were in an American ship called the Joseph T. Dickman. And they took us all the way down to Cape Town. And just before we reached Cape Town, Pearl Harbor happened. And at the same time, the Japs were coming down Malaya. So instead of going to North Africa, we were diverted to go to Singapore. And that's where I was, sitting in the sea, wondering what was going to happen. I used to turn on my back, not up around. It's a lonely life in the sea, you know. Couldn't see anybody except that ship. And then I noticed in the distance a boat. Well, my heart was in my mouth. Would that boat go before I got there? It took me about 2 hours to reach the boat. I noticed there were other people like me waiting to get aboard. 2 sailors to drop the rope, and I sat in the rope and they whipped me on board. It took hours to get to Singapore. If I'd had to swim, I would have still been doing it. We reached Singapore. By that time, the Japs were about nearly on the island. So we were quickly given kit, and most of our men were given old rifles and sent to be infantry. But our troop, I'm not saying it, I'm not bragging, but our troop was the crack troop. And there was only 4 anti-tank guns on Singapore, and we got the 4 guns. And I ended up on, coming from Malaya, there's a causeway across the sea into Bukit Timah Road.
Subscribe to our channel and we'll let you know when there's a new video to watch. The subscribe button is below the video next to the like, share and comment icons. To watch another video, just click on one of the pictures above the arrows now.